A couple months ago, I talked about Faust's bone-crushing excitement, which at the time was definitely one of the more underwhelming supers in the game. However, pretty soon after that video, it got buffed, and you could now use it to break the wall, which is fantastic. Most other characters could use their super to break the wall and get a knockdown afterwards, but Faust just couldn't. It would reset both characters back to neutral. Now, he can use it to break the wall, and get a knockdown just like everyone else. At the time, a lot of people suggested I talk about Axel's One Vision, which in fairness used to be pretty bad too, but has since been buffed, and now it's pretty good. You can cancel into it from specials, which is really nice. Although, in fairness, if I'm the one using it, it's still gonna look terrible, because I don't fucking know what to do with this. Now, it's really sick that those two supers got buffed. I've really enjoyed Strive's patches so far, I think I've said that a couple times. But there are still a few underwhelming supers left, and we're going to be talking about one of them today. Today, we're going to be talking about Soul's Heavy Mob Cemetery. Now, Soul is definitely not a character that comes to mind when you think of stuff that's weak or underwhelming. He's consistently been an incredibly powerful character, and before some smartass is like, oh, what about Soul players? Nah. All the Soul players I know at least are really cool, and it's one of my favourite matchups as a Gold Lewis player, so fuck out of here. Now, Heavy Mob Cemetery definitely isn't terrible. It does have a few niche uses, but I'll talk about how the move works first and some of the fundamental issues with it as a whole. First off, it's a frame 20 command grab. Which, even though it moves pretty fast once he gets going, is kinda slow. Just like Night Raid Vortex and Fafnir, you can't cancel into the move. You can't combo into it in any way, shape, or form. However, you could in the open betas, but you wouldn't. See, even if you could combo into Heavy Mob Cemetery, you probably wouldn't want to, and here's why. See, no matter how close you are to the corner, Heavy Mob Cemetery will never break the wall. In fact, it doesn't just not break the wall, but it also corners you, which kind of really sucks. Even if you could combo into Heavy Mob Cemetery, you'd pretty much always rather go for Tyrant Wave for the wall break and the knockdown. Because you still travel a decent distance after grabbing the opponent, landing it mid-screen also corners you. Now, you can avoid the side switch by using a Roman cancel after landing Heavy Mob Cemetery to continue the combo, switch sides again, and break the wall. Now, obviously that was absurdly strong. I mean, Axel almost died, but rightfully so. That's very expensive. That's all your meter gone, and even though you're getting the positive bonus from breaking the wall, you're not breaking it with a super, so you're not getting a knockdown afterwards. And to top it off, you're starting the combo with a move that's very hard to land, and we're going to talk about why it's hard to land now. If the opponent knows how to avoid it, then actually landing a Heavy Mob Cemetery is really difficult. See, I mentioned earlier that it has 20 frames of startup, and that's a decent amount, but that's not necessarily the issue. There are slower command grabs that people get caught by all the time, like chips and axles. But the issue is that not all 20 frames of startup are before the super freeze. 13 of them are. And then after the super freeze, there's another 7 frames of startup. So this move kinda has hyperbomb syndrome. The opponent can not see the move coming whatsoever, then see the super freeze, and then just hold up. You get like 3+ full seconds to react to it. Jacko's command grab super has the same issue. But it's not as big of a deal because she can actually combo into hers. If you want fat damage off a command grab with Soul, stick to Wild Throw. I'm pretty sure that combo's not optimal. I've seen people get 2 close slashes, but even without that, that's doing more damage than a heavy mob cemetery for the same amount of meter, and you're breaking the wall for the positive bonus. You do need the corner, but hey, it's better than cornering yourself. Now, there are a handful of other supers that have a decent bit of startup before the super freeze, but they have an interesting use. Supers don't drain any tension until the super freeze, but a lot of them have invincibility before the super freeze. For example, Faust's bone-crushing excitement has 16 frames of startup before the super freeze, but he has invincibility for all 16. This means that he can cancel that startup with a PRC for a significantly safer wake-up than waking up with a raw super. That's much safer than waking up with a raw, unsafe super, and you're still only spending 50% tension. Now, you might be thinking you can do this with Heavy Mob because of the 13 frames of startup before the super freeze, but unfortunately not. See, it does have throw invincibility and guard point, for a whole 21 frames in fact, after the super freeze, so frame 14 onwards. Before that, it has no invincibility of any kind whatsoever. This makes Heavy Mob Cemetery a terrible wake-up option in general. Stick to Volcanic Viper, maybe Tyrant Wave, or, God forbid, just fucking block. So, overall this move is pretty flawed. It's very hard to land, and even when you do land it there's some issues, but it certainly has its uses, mainly as a ranged punish. See, once you're moving, you beat pretty much anything thanks to the guard point. Situations where Heavy Mob Cemetery is genuinely a good option are quite rare, but they definitely exist. It can be good in situations where approaching with something else might be a little bit risky, such as Leo's Armored Stance. You can use it as a ranged punish in scenarios where Soul's other options just don't quite reach. For example, if you backdash Axel's command grab, you can punish with Heavy Mob Cemetery. You can also use it to safely punish stuff like Faust's item super from a distance. Now, punishing stuff from a distance is definitely the best use of Heavy Mob Cemetery in my opinion. But even there, it's not perfect. It's definitely got some severe issues. You can't just watch the opponent do thing from across the stage and react with Heavy Mob Cemetery. Stuff like the 13 frames where you don't have any invincibility will let you down. Also, if you're using Heavy Mob Cemetery, be very aware of how much meter your opponent has. If they've 50% or more, you could potentially be in big trouble. See, even in situations where Heavy Mob Cemetery should theoretically punish or beat whatever the opponent's doing, they can Purple Roman cancel out and potentially escape and punish you. Because of just how much damage it does, you might be tempted to use Heavy Mob Cemetery as like a raw punish for something that's really unsafe on block, like a Wake Up DP. But even here, it's outclassed. In some scenarios, Soul can even outdamage Heavy Mob Cemetery meterlessly. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to say about Heavy Mob Cemetery. It's definitely pretty underwhelming, even with its niche uses, but I think that's completely fine. Soul as is really strong, and more importantly, he's really fun. He doesn't really need for this to be any better than it is. It's completely fine for strong characters to have some weak tools. I mean, look at Third Strike. Some of the top characters in the game have supers that they don't pick in any matchup. Look at Marvel vs. Capcom 2. A lot of characters just have one assist that they always use. Look at fucking Super Smash Bros. Melee. You've got Sheik, a character who has a whole ass other character stuck to her in Zelda, who you don't even consider switching to 99.9% of the time. It's completely fine for strong characters to have some weak tools, because it just makes it all the more exciting when we do see those weak tools get their chance to shine. And that's especially true with Heavy Mob Cemetery, because it does look really fucking sick. Also, I'd like to finish this out with a quick shout out to Seth. They're a really talented Soul player, and they taught me some stuff about Heavy Mob that I didn't know, such as the fact you could combo into it in the open betas, and the Axel command grab punish. They're really talented, they're a pretty cool dude, so make sure you give them a follow. I'll make sure to put their Twitter in the description.